It said that I was something that should never have existed in this world. An experiment made to do nothing else but to prove that modern-day science could never be shot down. To show that humans have extended far beyond their own expectations. To show... No, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. As I awoke in a strange laboratory, I saw several humans jump with excitement. They immediately began writing down information in their notebooks. They opened my test tube and began recording my own physical information. They came closer with each different examination, so close to the point where I could feel the heat from the sweat on their bodies. Whatever I was, they must have worked for years to create me. I then saw a creature sprawled out on a table, unconscious with several scratches on it. Next to it, I saw a tray with tweezers and a microscope. I was curious about this creature, but before I could even begin to see what it was, a scientist noticed my curiosity and grabbed my shoulder. "Don't even think about it." The voice sent chills down my spine. It sounded like that of a madman, a voice of sheer insanity and insomnia. They began scrambling around to collect the recorded data on both me and the other creature, and immediately rushed out of the building. I was left alone with this creature. Curiosity and a small amount of fear filling my body. I walked up to it and stepped in a strange pile of goo. Looking under my foot, I saw a small purple blob with lifeless eyes drooping down its face. I jumped and threw it, only to see it drag down the wall and slither behind my test tube. The scientists had forgotten one of their papers, and I picked it up so I could see what was recorded. After several years of performing genetic tests, we have finally reached our goal. We shall name our new creation. I heard the door open and immediately dropped the paper. The scientists returned, this time with an elder scientist and a younger man in a suit, who I assumed to be the leader of this project. "Oh no! No, no! Do you see what you've done?" exclaimed the elder scientist. The boss chuckled. "Of course," he plainly replied. "We've created our path to victory." I felt as though I had no speech, so I gave out a low growl without reason. I didn't have a clue who this man was, but I could sense the evil in his heart. The boss came up to me and put a hand on my shoulder. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could say a word, I tackled him, feeling as though that was my only defense. Angered by how his creation did not obey, he gave his scientists a command and they immediately took me down into what appeared to be a basement. They strapped me to a chair and popped 4 discs into a machine they strapped to my head. I felt myself getting stronger, yet weaker in an odd way. Almost as if every time I felt more powerful, I forgot simple things, such as tackling or shouting. After this process, the young administrator started feeding me unlabeled blue, bitter candies. 70 of them forced down my throat. I began to feel more powerful and independent with each candy given to me. And as the 70th and final candy was forced to me, they released me from my prison. I looked around at the scientists around me, looking at how these candies had affected my physical abilities and strength. I felt invincible, as though nothing could stop me, as though I was created to be God himself. Before the scientists could do one final experiment on me, I looked at one of them, and almost immediately he held his head while his ears began bleeding uncontrollably. He died only a few minutes later. As the other scientists tried to mob me, I simply drew several sharp objects in the shape of stars out of my hand and brutally cut their arms. One scientist successfully stabbed me, and I simply put my hand over the fresh wound and it healed instantly. I killed him the same way as the first scientist. My creator fled, leaving only the young administrator. "You did this to me," I thought to myself. He gasped and looked around. Who said that?" he asked. Then he looked at me. "Oh, it was you. You're a psychic, I see." He grinned after his statement, but the grin simply faded into seriousness. "I'm aware I can't keep you here. We've made you too strong." He walked out of the building without another word. The creature who I was based off opened its eyes. I walked over to it and picked it up. "You're safe with me," I told it telepathically. The creature closed its eyes as I walked out of the lab. I took one last look at it and destroyed it with my stars. I let the now conscious creature fly free and scattered the documents around the mansion. I took one last look at my name before I too decided to take my own freedom. I walked and swam for miles and eventually isolated myself inside of a cave, leaving a warning that I was there and was not a force to be reckoned with. A bodyguard soon volunteered himself to prevent anyone from entering. 10 years later. During a cold night in my cave, I heard footsteps echoing from the entrance. I wondered who would be here and how they got past the bodyguard. So I created creatures of my own based off of other creatures I'd seen during my journey here. I even sent the genetic piles of goo to go throughout the cave to scare him away, but this boy was brave. Eventually, he reached me. He summoned his own creatures to weaken me. Some of these monsters even stopped my mobility. The last thing I remembered from that battle was him throwing a sphere at my head. And then, darkness. A couple of days later, I awoke inside of a strange world. I was then summoned in front of a large blue dog. Before I could do anything, the boy threw a purple ball at this dog and it vanished inside. I'll never forget the last thing that this boy in the red cap yelled before I once again returned into the strange world. "Mewtwo, return!"